Belinda Jane, hello, and thank you for welcoming me into this beautiful place. We've switched sides today, and it's magnificent because I'm actually enjoying the backdrop of your amazing grounds to this fabulous house of yours where all the magic happens. And I'm hoping that some of this magic will be able to reach many, many people in this way on this platform. So to everyone who's starting to tune into what we're doing, I'm grateful. Thank you to everybody. And we're so looking forward to continuing on this journey. Now today is about time. We've discussed time in the early part of this series, and we've both decided that for a number of reasons we want to continue on that conversation. So with that introduction in mind, Belinda Jane, talk to me about how time fits into the magic of the sacred pillars. Time, love, money, energy, purpose and passion, family, to have a meaningful life. It all weaves together, and time is just so esoteric. I'll let you start.
Thank you. Time is the canvas on which we paint our lives, right? It's the way that we decide for ourselves if the colours we're putting on, the fabric and fibre we're weaving in is exactly how we want it to look and to feel, to appear. So we all have a beginning and we all have an ending. But as you know, I believe that life in human form is here on the earth plane, but our energy was beforehand and our energy continues on, right, afterward. So we have this moment in time to begin to be aware and conscious that we can choose that commodity any way we wish to, and that we have the opportunity and take the challenge that everything unfolds in natural divine design and in time, just as it's meant to. And opportunities and challenges will come, and often the harder things that we do lead to the path becoming more open and easier as life goes on. So when we learn to not avoid the tricky and difficult things through the unfolding of time and through our experiences and what we've encountered in our past that grow us and help our lives and the tapestry we weave become richer, we look back and give thanks for those things rather than with regret or hoping or wishing that they would change and would have been done differently. So that to me is the main, if we view it as a canvas on which to express, to explore and experience ourselves.
And the canvas is finite, which is interesting because it's only in this reality that it is finite. In the quantum world, it's infinite, isn't it? And yet it seems to have a beginning and end, and it has a pace, it has a timeline, which is a paradox, as many things are when you start to question the supernatural, filled with paradox. So the canvas that you talk about is filled with choice, and yet I hear many people often say, I didn't have a choice, or I have no other choice. And I think, and that's a very common thing I hear, and I always say, there is always a choice. Why do we have this mindset of limitation?
It depends on your age and stage. You know, we have our, in the work, when we look at time, we have our tanks, our time tanks that talk about 0 to 7, what's necessary in order to create the foundation for the whole being. 7 to 14, like we go in our sevens, right?
So the 7-year passages.
Yeah. So depending upon what happens in each one of those, we approach it differently because we're not experienced. In that first 0 to 7, we're just subconscious. We're just absorbing everything, and our cells are opening to everything at the very same time. It's an extraordinary, almost clairvoyant connection to the past. We know nothing except the present moment. It's a beautiful time. And then we move into 7 to 14, which is really about moving away from the family and finding out who you are with your peers. And depending on how that first tank went, the second tank will expose another round, or a cell within your cells will open, a door within the cells will open. And then that determines what moves to the next one and the next. And it was funny, when I was writing the work when I was about 27, I got to 70 and I remember believing, well, after that, what is there really? Whereas now in my 60s, I'm going, wow, I better get going with what that 70 to 77 is going to be about. However, it depends, when you say, how do people say when there's no, or approach something when they feel there is no choice? Yes, we say to people, you always have choice. And I would always say, you choose toward what your soul's journey is displaying to you, and always go to the highest version or the love expression or experience of what that could bring and what you could give in that. And then you'll have and make the right choice. Because often the end game, I need to get, I need to get here. And in order to get here, I need to choose differently, right, to where I am. And so what happens then is we change course just a little bit to get to that outcome that we've already chosen. We've chosen it down the spiral of our life, of our soul story. And when you arrive where you want to go, you look back and go, now I can see why those stepping stones needed to be the way that they were.
Yes, so true, isn't it? And as I refer to them as well, stepping stones. And they don't always seem easy at the time. In fact, they're all fair, do they? But when you look back, as I said to a friend yesterday, through those hardest times in my life, I wouldn't change a thing, because it would change where I am today, and I don't wish to alter any of that. It's interesting listening to you talk about time in that context, and I'm trying to look at it from the point of view of the abstract of, and we discussed this in the money episode, this abstraction of time as an energy. So if we link it together as energy, and you're talking about feeling, not going into our problem-solving prefrontal cortex mode, but actually being energetic beings, and then we're tapping into that. So this then that abstract of time and money and the trade-off that we make, that starts to make sense to me. That starts to bring this esoteric concept more into a fundamental day-to-day grounding that maybe a lot of people new to this could understand and frame a little bit better. So with that in mind then, at what point do we consider it a fair trade-off?
It's the worthy and deserving we talk of every single time.
Perfect.
It's the worthy and deserving. I can now recognise that time is actually a commodity like the other pillars. How do I spend my time? Am I deserving and worthy of feeling abundant around that? Am I time poor? The words, we spell our words, we spell our life story with the words that we say. So people will often say, I didn't have time. They're often late. They don't value themselves a lot in that. They don't have downtime. They don't spend the time to look inward, recognising it's just something that you spend no different to the other three.
I was raised in a migrant German family. I'm first generation Australian, and my grandparents came out, and my parents lived their childhood, experienced their childhood at the epicenter of World War II in Berlin, and as such they brought a very strong mentality of working to Australia, to their lives and to my upbringing. They teach me a lot about money, but they taught me a lot about showing up and making things happen. And they made a great deal happen. But what they wouldn't do, they frowned upon, let's say, as I think your family would do, in having downtime and having that, what we now call a balance. And my mother, where she's still alive, she'd be saying, what are you young people talking about? Downtime. Yeah. Right? Stop being so precious, she would say.
Consciousness has really shifted in the last 10, 15 years. There's a real command internally now, a demand almost, for people to recognise I'm no longer contented filling my days, filling my nights, allocating my time in a way that brings me nothing, takes me nowhere. Mm-hmm. And that didn't really exist in consciousness then. It was paying the bills. That Mars mentality was all about the very practical, and good on them. But we've stepped forward now. And it sounds very contradictory because constantly I'm speaking about searching inward, but we're searching inward firstly and then stepping forward and wanting a different world, wanting to do different things with our time and to share it in different ways and to balance it in different ways. Really important for us to have balance. In one of the workbooks or our playbook, we'll speak to what do you do in a day, because no one comes through in that 24 hours to the front door and steals some of it away for some of us. Everyone has the allocation of 24/7. Yes, we don't know when we're going to draw our last breath. And so that's why there's many philosophies that say live each day as if it were your last, right? Actually bring all of the deepest parts of yourself all of the time to all communication, all conversation, all child rearing, all purpose and passion and familial exchanges. What about if that was then the way we moved forward in our time? What if we used our time for that? In contribution and service, the world would look and be a very different place.
I've been doing that for a little while now, and it's amazing. I've, no stress, no obligation in my life. And it really came home to me, the trade-off of time and money. I'd had a sense of it when I was working in the corporate world for Microsoft years ago. I was working with, in my team, 6 men under 30 who were all multimillionaires, and that was the glory days of Microsoft at the beginning of the first .com boom. And what's happening now? I saw this coming 25 years ago, but what do we, how do we navigate through all of that? I was part of that world, and I remember, Andy Shooten, I'm happy to use his name, and this is, favourable comment, Andy. This was a lovely concept that stays with me today. Andy said to me, "Do you know, when you've got as much money as I do now, as I'm lucky enough to have now, time is far more important a commodity." And he was not 30 at the time when he said this. And I thought, for me, it was a profound concept. Growing up to the German migrants, work, work, work. I thought, what do you mean time is more valuable than money? And of course, being a single parent, it made sense to me, and I manifested that. And I just had to get the money side of it right. So for my friend who came to me yesterday in tears, he's not old. And he's in a position with young children, a mortgage. Very typical scenario that a lot of people can relate to. Desperately unhappy because he doesn't know how to find his way out of his depth as a man. So he's going to that point that all men go to at some point, and it's coming. All right, but how would we speak to him about the choice of, I need to fulfill my role, I have to provide?
That's that debt to death cycle that we speak about, that I don't like to talk about it because I'm really looking to a world where we're moving right out of that, where the financial system changes, where a lot of the work ethic changes, where there is more balance around that. And speaking to your friend's situation, everything that has led him to that position, that positional place, is imperative in order for him to break down, to break through. We've spoken about that a lot. You don't get there to the darkness and the depth without those things happening to you. And that's what time is for, to unfold the opportunities and challenges, the stepping stones, and it arrives us somewhere. And what our work is about is, as we drop inside and be aware and conscious of that, then we make different choices, right? Because we will no more, we can no longer stay doing and being the way that we were. Experience is the only teacher. That's what time is for.
So true, isn't it? Because it leads into the concept of change, which we touched on as well, where I asked the question of you once, why do we only change through pain and discomfort? Well, because when everything's great, we're not motivated to change that, because it's human nature to say, this is lovely and let's just keep that going.
But speaking to time, those beautiful moments that we speak about, they are the reward for energy well spent during our time. They're our rest period. They're the times for us to enjoy the beauty, the magnificence, the colours and textures of life that we have already painted on that canvas and on that screen, or woven into our tapestry as we speak to. So you stand back and you look, actually, I'm a work of art, a work in progress, however you'd like to say it. Everybody is that. There's no one that isn't that. It's when you stagnate and stop that disease starts to set in. We feel the waves, we're imploding. And I know that that is the most pivotal, important moment in our time. I don't shy away from those moments with my people. I feel like there is something in there, a gem, in that exact breakdown. And you may need to mine it out. You may need to dig deep, but it's always there. It's never not there, because that is why those things happen in time. And, we speak to there's pivotal moments in time, and there's also the dark depths. Just there, like as there is in a mountain range, the valley is just as beautiful as the mountain. It's the way that we, I guess, approach it when we're raising our children, rather than saying, yeah, these hard times happen, this leads to resilience, and then one rests. Like, we need to really teach them that the hard and what we would consider to be the bad times, yes, they're hard, but they're not bad. They're the tapestry and the richness of life unfolding herself. It's exactly as it's supposed to be, the seasons, the years as they go by. Just as each one equally as important. We can't have any one of those seasons without the others. So they're all for a reason. There's a rhyme and a reason and a majesty in the way that time unfolds. And then we determine and decide what we do within that landscape.
So if I can then reframe that a little bit to just to understand it myself a little bit better. It's okay to have those pauses and to enjoy what we might say is the fruits of our labor, or the difficult times that we have now risen out of and healed through and come to terms with, or let's say forgiven perhaps and accepted. And that's a nice place to be, right? And it's okay then to have a pause. We don't need to launch into, the next challenge.
It's imperative.
It's back to relationships and what I've said to you before. I don't understand why people just continue to just go from one to the next one to the next one. And there's no breathing space in between those relationships. And as you so beautifully and articulately put it, and I quoted you last night over dinner to a very dear friend, and where he was questioning, what really is the point? And I said, well, to quote Belinda Jane, the relationship is the deepest and darkest part of you meeting the deepest, darkest part of another. And it's so profound and simple, isn't it? And I don't mean to get off the topic of time, but I think you can't talk about time without talking about how it influences every aspect of our life. The time we put into a relationship. And in this case, I'm saying, well, where do we stop? Where do we take stock? The relationship has been a stepping stone to our greatest learning. And for many of us, there are more than one significant relationships in our timeline. So unless we integrate that, what happens then? We just jump into another thing and another challenge and another story, right?
You take the same thing to a different person.
Yeah.
But eventually, you don't see it initially. You don't see that you're taking your same story, your perception, because everything is the inside world projected to the outside. Everything is that. You are the projector. So unless you've done, as would be our case around our work, unless you've done some soul-serving, soul-settling, soul-searching, you will just rediscover the very same thing, be it 2 years in, be it 10 years in, doesn't matter. It will revisit you because it's there in order for you to love it to death, to get to the point where you can accept it with your whole heart and take responsibility for it. Oh my gosh. I've had men, one of my favourite stories actually, I won't mention names, but that have married wealthy guys. They've married 2 or 3 times and eventually walked in my door and said, I'm the common denominator, aren't I? And I'm like, oh, get out. You've got it. I never need to see you again. Bye. Because I don't hold on to people. Once someone really gets it, I'm just kind of like, you have got it. Now let's drop into hypnotic and see the way we can weave that into the tapestry of the new story you want to tell, of the new canvas that you're painting. But I just love the penny dropping.
Well, when the penny drops, though, for that man and others, and knowing that, I mean, I would say that's only the first step to having that self-awareness. The next obvious question is why? Why am I the common denominator. And, that'll take us down a whole different
But it's
road.
the self-responsibility, your ability to respond, your ability to respond to your story, because you're the storyteller, you're the director, you're the producer, you're the creative, you're the camera. As soon as we are the whole picture, you're the actor, you draw to you the other actors, but actually it's all your story unfolding. It's not got to do with anyone else. They just happen to be there as a screen for it, be it a work situation, a familial situation, intimate relationship situation. They're just people screens. And if we view it that way, as this man did, like it all just came, the years, I'd probably seen him 2 or 3 times a year, finished the work, and I just knew it was awaiting to your question. It was waiting that arrival and that powerful position and place of being ready to receive it. We say in our work, struggle enough and you're ready to change. So true. 3 loads of alimony now. He's like, oh, finally, I've seen the light. It cost him, right? Cost him to see the light.
But how good for him. I firmly believe that it's so important. One of the biggest breakthroughs we can have is to come out of victimhood and then take responsibility. And that moment, he's not blaming anymore. He's stopped blaming. I know a man's in a similar sort of story, but he just blames and blames and blames and says they're all out to get me and they're taking my houses and they're taking my money.
And that's the difference between a king that we've spoken to in other podcasts and the Peter Pan. The Peter Pan is the where I've arrived in my time is all on someone else. I'm the victim of circumstance or the victim of that person rather than I chose all this. I chose that person. I chose to do or to not do to arrive where I am. That is the kingdom. And it's called that for a very good reason. That's where you access heaven, right? Everything else is just our fumbling our way to that realization. This is all on me. If I feel, therefore I am, right? Which is the child ego state. But if I feel worthy and deserving, then I'm putting the stepping stones up the mountain to the kingdom.
It's so imperative. The worthy and deserving, I think about that and I think, it's so important. And I think, so is love, or so is how we use our energy. And the conversation today about how we attribute and apportion our time, all of that comes back to really worthy and deserving. If you're not worthy and deserving, then you would make choices that will keep you in a place of resentment, let's call it that, or at least a position which will lead to your resentment at some time. If you feel not worthy and deserving of a partner who truly values who you are, then you are diminishing yourself, aren't you? And then you find, as a lot of your clients, where they come in here and they're desperately unhappy because they've just spent 20 years of their life with somebody who is not aligned to themselves, and yet they are not victims of that, because that comes back to their feeling worthy and deserving. So once they flip into worthy and feeling more worthy, is it at that point where you say can no more, will no longer, and then of course comes letting go. Wow, I think we're covering everything in this one session. It's absolutely brilliant. Now I know why we had to redo it.
But also, I was thinking about the coursework moving forward that's taking way longer to prepare 35 years of work. I thought, I'll be able to do that with Angelica and with you guys within 3 months. It'll be done. It's going to take us a really long time to prepare this for the world, to actually integrate everything, not just that I've learned through experience, but also the things that we've written and the things that I know have always worked. That has arrived me at the perfect time. I couldn't have done this 3 years ago before, really hard waves came crashing down and my dark night of the soul, and healing my wounds by exposing them in a very raw and real way. That helps me then to craft something and sculpt something that no matter what people are going through in time and in what of our tanks where they are in their time, All of those things will be able to be accessed now because I've reached this age and stage. So I could say that would work for a 21-year-old. I had a beautiful 21-year-old in here on Friday, and she still accesses the work all the time, speaks to people about it all the time. And then, I'll see people, as you know, in their 70s, and this beautiful man again Friday, and he's in his 70s, and he just went, this is what I've been waiting for and looking for. So consciousness has shifted where, yes, everyone can access it. I've had the experience, enough people seen to know that it always works. I would have been very presumptuous to say that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because I wasn't experienced enough. I was experienced, but not enough, and not as diverse as I am now.
When you say the body of work is taking so long to complete, I wonder whether that's reasonable. I wonder whether there is any sort of finite completion of this. I think the work is absolutely fabulous, and I want to talk to you about rolling it out rather than saying, the 20th century concept, let's write a book, let's print it, let's launch it. We don't have to do it that way anymore, and I think the work is too important not to get out to the world and anybody who's connecting with us. And as I say in the description of the podcast, if you're watching this, it's no coincidence.
Yeah. And that's how the course is written, exactly like that. And I've got it now to a point where I was, viewing it over the weekend, and it's probably going to be 10. I'd said initially sort of 7 or 8. It's now feeling through the routine of ritual that we begin with, where people are actually beginning their days differently. So when we speak to time, it's like, upon waking, what do I do? When I am lying in my bed ready to drift to sleep, what exactly do I do? Like, I've really got, there's finite points there, and people will listen to some parts of it and go, probably that's not for me. Listen to other parts of it. Oh my gosh, that is really suiting and serving me. So I'm only implementing and popping in there the things that 99% of people have said to me, that really works. Thank you for telling me that. Or I'll get messages and they'll say, do you know, I'm still doing that. All these years on, I've taught that to my children. There's the essence and the value and the beauty of time. When within your family, I've seen children, I've seen the next generation of you. So that's such a privilege, because I know their parents, I know where they came in. It's just, I adore it. And that happens now often. So I know where that generation is. I've got my, finger on the pulse of where they are in time, where they visit when they drop into hypnotic. And consciousness and awareness has shifted because of the time we've taken to arrive here.
It's fascinating because you're seeing the generational thread now coming through and unfold in their own unique soul story. Can we just spend a minute talking about the work for viewers who don't really understand what that actually means? Your Elements of Life program, for anyone who doesn't know it, it is a 6-week program which involves hypnotic. It's a very intimate setting with you. I've experienced it, and you have to experience. I can't talk about how wonderful it is. It's something to be experienced. And what I've attempted to do as the producer of this series is to showcase and talk around some of those, the pillars, not some of them, all of them, covering all of them: time, love,
we've done
money,
them all now.
Energy, relationships, intimate relationships, family, purpose and passion. And it's been just wonderful. And I feel like I'm doing a masterclass.
You are.
in this setting. And I'm so grateful for that, as you know. And it's my desire to get this out to the world as it is yours. And I think it's your calling. And I think you've been asked from a higher place to get on with it. And I think that's been my role now, to come in the last 2 years and reconnect with you. I first met you 30 years ago, so that we could actually do this. So the intention for our audience is that we are going to create the opportunity to recreate that intimate setting with you, and to have that learning, and to enjoy that in the context of hypnotic, and all the richness and self-discovery that happens in that journey in this house anywhere in the world. Is that right? So that's kind of the aim of the work.
That's it. And even a lot of the people that have done the work have said, I just can't wait to reconnect with it again, just to get the reminders just to get the little soul kiss, the little touch that I might have forgotten about, because I do often bombard people that first session with a lot of information and a lot of shifts and changes, fine-tuning. And what I've learned to do now with the way that we're structuring this, it's introduced really gently and slowly. And there will be hypnotic scripts in there for people to understand how to access the internal. We've also got a brilliant songstress. We've been, one of our masters is Marty Ritchie, who has written, not only, had 20, 30 years of the most brilliant work herself, writing songs, but she did say that she would write the soundtrack to this work, which is, I get all of us actually that have heard it just soul tingle. Our body just truth tingles every time we hear these that are aligned with each one of the modules. I mean, how sacred is that? What a privilege to actually have a soundtrack to your work.
And yet that's what Marty brings. Marty's doing that through her work, which is absolutely unique. I had the privilege of spending some time with her in the studio recently. And I can only say it's watching God's work. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Marty, for anyone who doesn't know, has written, recorded and sings on the soundtrack to these podcasts. It's a beautiful piece of music called Temple. It's absolutely thrilling to listen to. And then she also does the sound bath work through her day spa, which is just
next level
experience for anyone who's not done that. And of course, I want to work with Marty and help her somehow bring that work forward. And this is why I'm documenting some of that.
And we were speaking to contribution and service. What I've done my whole life is ready now. Obviously little moments of contributing and serving with people I've worked with, but to bring the whole body like this, it's like as I put it out, the people that needed to help me at the right time all dropped in. And Marty no doubt will interview, or you'll interview Marty at some point about the way that conversation between the two of us went when I literally held her hands in mine and she was studying our work, and I knew the only way she was going to be able to really deeply connect with it on a soul level was to write it. And that's what she did. So she was serving herself and serving the work and then serving the whole planet. The global release of this will all have those songs woven into it. And, beautiful videos, beautiful images and things, because everybody accesses information differently, So all of the senses will be called upon for the holistic nature of the work. And again, I couldn't have said that 5 or 10 years ago. It would have been a completely different course. And yet it could never have been arrived at without her and without you. Right? And without my daughters being at the age where they can contribute and serve, and they want to be a part of it too. Yeah, they were too young before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in summarising that, and I know that we've just spent some time talking about the work that we're doing and what we're bringing, but to bring that back to the person who's listening to this, who is in a very unique place in their life, and they're listening to this. I think there are a lot of great takeouts for somebody about time, the allocation of time, the trade-off of how you use your time most effectively.
How you choose joy, how you choose love, how you choose connection. How often do you choose that? And then if I had my way in the world, what would happen then is the other things would fade. The fears, the doubt, the disconnection, the confusion, the dis-ease, they would begin to fade. And that's the dawning of the new earth, right? Which can only happen at the right time.
I've always said, through the darkest times, every day try and see the beauty in whatever form, because it's the thing that will bring the light to you and bring even the kernel of light into the despair that you're feeling at any moment in time.
And to love the dark times just as much. That's what we haven't been doing. We tend to either shut them down, medicate them, or move from them, rather than to allow the depth that soul story can take you to, and acknowledge that as equally as significant and important.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? We try and avoid the suffering. The suffering is, as I said to my children, it's a part of our human existence, and we all suffer, and there's no getting away from it. But to be able to, as you say, not anesthetize yourself or to drink heavily or whatever it is, that you do to try and, we do as human beings, to want to avoid discomfort. It's human nature. But to allow yourself consciously to sit in the discomfort, in the despair, in the sadness, something beautiful comes out of that. I've experienced that myself.
Well, my daughter teaches our work to children, and she teaches mindfulness, consciousness, dropping in, and the loving allowance and acceptance that it is what it is in this moment. They teaches them not to take things personally, and teaches them to have a regulation and regard for their own soul story. And it's extraordinary work. You know, she's just incredible. She does I've snuggled by the side of the room sometimes when she's been working, and often she'll work in the garden with them. And I think to myself, I would never have said that. Where did she get that from? This is dropped through her in any moment. And it's exactly what that child needs to hear. And they start to implement the things, they feel soul settled. It's what she came for, right? We were talking about that in Purpose and Passion with my other child.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So all is aligned. Nothing is wasted. You know, the alignment, perfect divine design, rather than it all having to be sunshine roses. I always say tippy-toeing through tulips. There needs to be that dark, moist mud of the earth for the lotus to grow. And that has to come from somewhere. And it's from our times where we least expect it, where we feel ill-equipped, and where we need to find that spark within ourselves. And that's why those things happen in time.
It's just magical, isn't it? It's like, you know, it's like these plants that grow out of, you know, out of
or the sidewalk, you know, in New York you just see, and in Japan as well.
Like the lotus grows out of mud.
Yeah. But if they're going to come, they're going to come, right? And they're going to always lead up toward the light. And that will be the lotus hypnotic is one of the ones I'm going to weave into it, because
Beautiful.
By far in the last 15, 20 years, that's been everybody's favourite. So that's the other thing. They're tried and true because of the experiences.
Yeah, so many beautiful metaphors. So if anybody's having a tough time at the moment, I know one of my friends is, don't despair.
Well, allow the despair.
Yeah, as in, don't think that this is all there is.
No. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass.
But it passes with more grace if you accept it first.
So my German grandfather used to say to me, and with great wisdom, I think, he used to say, Ronnie, don't worry, it feels really bad now, but time will take care of it. It's a nice way to finish this conversation. Time takes care of everything, I guess.
It really does.
If you allow it to.
It really, really does. Perfect timing.
What a beautiful conversation. Belinda Jane, thank you so much. Namaste.